Hello, dear polymer clay enthusiast. I'm Mihaela from Learn Polymer Clay, and in today's tutorial I want to inspire you to make a beautiful pair of dangle earrings with embossed focal pieces, and we are going to finish these pieces with a faux enamel look. In order to make the embossed elements, I am going to use molds that I received from Craspire.com, and you'll find the links in the description. And I'm also going to use a stamp, a ginkgo leaf stamp, to make a beautiful pattern on the back of the pieces. I'm working with black polymer clay that I have previously conditioned, and I filled an area of the mold to have an idea of the look of the component, and you can use these molds to make beautiful components with faux stones. But for these pieces I wanted to use an inclusion. I wanted to use some red gemstones that I thought would make these focal pieces even more interesting. So I placed a small gemstone, red gemstone, in the middle of the mold area. Just rolled some black clay into a ball, and I pressed this clay into the mold, and I took the time to press it well and make sure that I'm filling up the mold with the clay. I use the roller to press the clay even more, and then you'll just have to use your sharp rigid blade and remove the excess clay by placing your blade on top of the mold and keeping it parallel to the mold. You might need to make several shavings to remove the excess clay, and then you'll just have to flex the mold and gently take the textured clay out of the mold. And then I had this idea of making a pair of dangle earrings, so I had to work a little bit on how to attach a hoop element to the design, and I decided to use resin and put UV resin on the back and place the metal component and trap it in the cured resin. And then in order to have a very beautiful faux enamel look for these pieces, I decided to use mica powders, and I've made my trial piece, which this is going to be the second earring. And I decided to use some light green mica powder to color the faux stones, the 4 faux stones which are placed on top and on the bottom and on the sides of the red gemstone. I'm using a brush to color these. Then I decided to use some blue mica powder in some areas of these stones to give them a look which hopefully is even more interesting. And then I'm going to use some pinkish mica powder to counter the margins of the piece, to counter some elements on the margin of the focal piece. And when working with mica powders, you can use a brush, you can use a sponge, you can use your fingers to apply mica powders. And because I wanted to have a faux enamel look for these pieces, I decided to use some Fimo gold mica powder in some areas. And I thought that this made my piece even more interesting. And I thought that this looked a little bit like ancient, antique jewelry pieces, especially with an Asian flavor to them. This was my intention anyway. Then I flipped the element and I've used a brush to apply some Fimo gold mica powder on the back as well, a little bit too much. And then I used my fingers to burnish the mica powder into the clay. And these are the elements of the first pair of earrings, but then I am going to make a second pair because I like these molds very much and these elements. And for my trial piece, I try to color the mold with mica powders, and this was not a very good idea at all because it is very difficult to clean the molds with baby wipes, and I also tried with a brush and liquid soap. So I would not recommend you to do this. I would do the same thing again. I would place a gemstone, a red gemstone, in the middle of this element that has a faux stone in the middle. And then I fill the mold with black polymer clay. Then I pressed on the clay. I used the roller to press it even more. I used the rigid blade to remove the excess clay. And as I said, you don't have to do this in one movement. You can shave the clay several times. And then you might want to use your roller to make a flat back. And because this element has some very beautiful but very fragile details, I decided to use some black clay that I passed through the setting number 2 of my Atlas Past machine, and I'm going to use a ginkgo leaf stamp to impress a beautiful pattern on the back of the piece. And in fact, this is going to be the back of the focal piece. And then I put I put the molded element on top, but before I am going to use mica powders and color it, because I wanted to have a beautiful contrast between the black clay, which is the background piece, and the colored embossed element. Again, I flexed the mold and I gently took off the molded element. You might need to use your tools to smooth off some areas of the design. And again, I used light green mica powders in the upper part of the element. I used some teal mica powder around the gemstone, the red gemstone. And I used again some Fimo gold to accentuate the fragile, beautiful details of the bottom of the focal piece of this embossed element. And then I've used some gold mica powder to color the back of the round piece, because I wanted to have this beautiful pattern on the back with the accentuated ginkgo leaf pattern. And I decided to attach a ginkgo leaf element to these dangle earrings, and the drop bead and the pinkish drop bead. And for these pieces, I am just going to poke holes which is a lot easier than trying to attach metal elements with UV resin. Of course, you can poke holes after baking the pieces if you prefer, using a hand drilling tool. And now, after smoothing off the margins and making sure that I'm happy with the look of the pieces, you can bake them for 40 minutes, 45 minutes in the preheated oven. I bake my pieces on parchment paper because I'm making the back of the pieces um, in the same time. And then you'll just have to let the clay cool down. And for the faux enamel look, I'm going to pair the mica powders with UV resin. So I'm just using a brush and I'm applying UV resin on top of the gemstone, and also on top of the areas colored with mica powders, and I'm applying UV resin on top of the gemstone because even though it is, let's say, trapped inside the polymer clay, I would not rely on this solely to keep these gemstones in place. So you'll either have to use liquid Fimo and then put some liquid Fimo on the back of these gemstones and then press the clay into the mold. And this liquid Fimo will act as glue, or you'll have to try to take them out after baking the pieces and glue them with super glue or different industrial strength glue that works well with polymer clay. In my case, I just wanted to use UV resin for the faux enamel look, but also to glue, let's say, glue these gemstones to my focal pieces. Then I cured the resin for 1.5 minutes, and as I said, I wanted to attach metal hoop elements to the first earring components, and I had to make a supporting system, especially because these pieces do not have a flat surface on the other end, and it's very you cannot put them facing downwards and expect them to sit straight because they would not. So I had to put them on metal cutters and then put the metal element on top and apply resin on the entire surface on the back of the piece and near the metal element as well. And again, I cured the resin for 1.5 minutes. And then in order to put together the earring designs, I am going to use smaller and larger jump rings. I'm going to use 2 smaller jump rings to attach the hoop elements to beautiful earring gold color metal components, earring oval metal earring components with an opening. And for the second pair of earrings, I'm going to use small jump rings to attach the ginkgo leaf and the pinkish drop bead. And of course, when using jump rings, you'll have to use pliers to open the jump ring sideways, attach your elements, and close the jump ring sideways. And I used a larger jump ring to attach the 2 elements to the focal piece, and I used the same smaller jump ring to attach the focal piece to the same oval gold color metal earring component. And of course, you'll have to attach the ear caps for the earring. And these are the finished pieces, and I hope that you also feel that they have an Asian look to them, because this is part of the Asian inspired collection, and I encourage you to watch the other tutorials from this series. Thank you for watching the tutorial. Please tell me what you think about this idea. I can't wait to read your messages. Thank you, and stay tuned for more inspiration for work with polymer clay.